pupils how they could tell when the night had ended and the day had begun. "Could it be," asked one of the students, "when you see an animal in the distance and you are able to tell whether it's a sheep or a dog?" "No," answered the rabbi. Another asked, "Is it when you can look at a tree in the distance and decide whether it's a fig tree or a peach tree?" "No," answered the rabbi. "Then when is it?" the pupils demanded. The rabbi answered them this. He said, "It's when you can look on the face of any man or woman and see it's the face of your sister or brother. Because if you can't see this, you're still in the darkness. The night is still not over, and the day has not dawned." Now, psychologists tell us that if we are to love our neighbors as ourselves, we first need to have a good estimate of our own self-worth. Well, one day a man went to an auction, and while there he bid on an exotic parrot. Now, he really wanted this bird, so he got caught up in the bidding, and he kept on bidding, but kept getting outbid, so he bid higher and higher. Finally, he bid way more than he intended, and he bought the bird. As he was paying for the parrot, he said to the auctioneer, "I sure hope this parrot can talk. I'd hate to have paid this much for it, only to find out that he can't talk." "Well, don't worry," said the auctioneer. "He can talk. Who do you think kept upping the bid?" Well, last week I was talking about the ancient religion often called the perennial philosophy, a tapestry from which the so-called higher religions are all cut. The scholars tell us that in addition to the 4 Gospels known in the New Testament, there's a 5th lost Gospel, known by scholars as Q. And they know this because St. Luke quotes from it a lot, and no other Gospel does so. So Luke had in his hands a manuscript that other writers didn't. The ancient religion, although it's lost to us today, is rather like that. It shows up in all the other religions and is even present in atheism. And it's the origin of the Golden Rule, the origin of the concept that we're all one world family, and the origin of the concept of loving the neighbor. Now, loving the neighbor is said most succinctly by Judaism. "Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself." Jesus said it this way: "You shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, and with all of your soul, and with all of your strength, and with all of your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." Now, Hinduism said, man attains a proper rule of action by looking on his neighbor as himself. And the Buddha said, just as a mother would protect her only child at the risk of her own life, even so you are to cultivate a boundless heart towards all beings. Let your thoughts of boundless love pervade the whole world. Confucius said, seek to be in harmony with all of your neighbors. Live in amity with your brethren. Islam teaches no one is a believer until he loves for his neighbor and for his brother what he loves for himself. The president of the American Atheists, Dave Silverman, was invited to be a guest on Fox, Varney and Company. He was brought on to talk about what atheists do during times of crisis and how atheists prepare for hurricanes. Well, Silverman said that atheists are going to stock up on goods and batteries and water, etc. He says, we will evacuate if necessary. We will help our family and our neighbors stay safe. What we won't do is sit around and pray that God's going to make everything better. So you see, even in atheism, the perennial philosophy shows up. The first teaching of do unto others as you'd have them do unto us is the cornerstone of all true religion. It's level one, and it's demanding. It asks that we treat one another fairly, that we don't lie, that in business we are ethical, that in politics we deny special interest and seek the common good. The second level is the recognition that we're one world family, despite any superficial differences that might exist. This too is difficult and requires a conscious decision not to discriminate against any people on the basis of race, or creed, or color, or enabling or disabling condition, or sexual orientation, or ethnicity. We are to treat one another as if we were related by blood, for in essence we all are. In other words, we have to do unto others into the world family with no exceptions to be made. The third level is to take the concept one step further and take it into the deepest level, the level of love. We are to love the neighbor as we love ourselves. Jesus was asked the question, "Who is my neighbor?" And in reply, Jesus related the parable of the Good Samaritan, who went above and beyond to rescue an injured man, even though he was a man of different faith. Now, the thrust of this parable is that everyone is our neighbor and is worthy of our respect and assistance, whether a member of our religion or professing none. Similarly, in Islam, Muhammad says, assist any person that's oppressed, whether Muslim or non-Muslim. In the Bhagavad Gita, which predates these religions by thousands of years, it says in the mouth of God, "He whose love is alike to friend and foe," this is God speaking, "that man is dear to me." According to the best research found in Lynn McTaggart's book, The Bond, we're hardwired with an innate love for other people. But laid over this innate love is a learned program of competition, survival of the fittest, fear, greed, and self-serving. But the good news is that we are actually hardwired to cooperate and that we can throw this dark self-centeredness off. However, last week I argued that instead of throwing this overlay off, the world religions have bought into this negative programming, and we find, instead of treating one another as we would be treated, and as we really are, as one family, instead, religions have fallen into the trap of exclusivism. Believe it our way or you'll go to hell. Very sadly, in practice, religion is one of the major causes of hatred in this world. I once talked to a brilliant pipe organ builder who said to me, "The future, David, of the pipe organ is in the past." I was rather stunned by that statement until I listened to the instrument he'd built on 15th century tracker specifications. The sound was to die for. Similarly, the future of faith lies in the past. It lies in the recovery of this ancient teaching that underlies all religions. For it is in fact a cutting edge, strange as that might sound. For we cannot better the ancient faith, it seems, and we cannot, it seems, live up to it either. Yet. But strangely, living up to this ancient faith happens to be where the higher religions can actually help us, because they do develop this third teaching on love, and don't seem to be afraid of it as they are of the second. They all teach neighbor love, and many practice it on some level, especially faith-based charities such as Loaves and Fishes and Francis House. But the hazard is this kind of love is not an easy road. Prejudices run deep. You see, it's a lot easier to build on differences and create solidarity than to build bridges based on do unto others and that we're all one family. But that's precisely why we need this third level. We need to get into neighbor love, for love is the greatest force in the universe. It moves mountains, and it finds a way where there is no way. This neighbor love also applies to our enemies. The Bhagavad Gita, which is closest in time to the perennial philosophy or the ancient religion, says, "He whose love is alike to friend and foe, that man is dear to God." Jesus says something very similar. God brings his rain and sun on the just and the unjust, meaning that God treats friend and foe alike. And that's why Jesus told us to love our enemies and do good to those who despitefully use us. It's what the Divine Spirit wants us to do. This is a very tall order. But anything less than this kind of love is going to keep us on our present course, which is going to destroy the human experiment on earth. It's that tall an order. And that's why the future of mankind is in the past. The good news is we're hardwired to be able to do this. It's difficult, but not impossible. Many greats have done this in their lives and deaths. When Socrates drank the hemlock, Jesus when he was crucified, Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. when they were martyred, Mother Teresa when she cared for everyone regardless of who they were, Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu when they instituted the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which averted a bloodbath in South Africa, and the untold thousands of men and women and youth and children who have died in the streets from Sarajevo to Tahrir Square to bring about a better world. Unknown soldiers without an epitaph or a record of their existing. Carol Pearson was riding the Bay Area Rapid Transit intent on visiting her friend Sue, who was in the hospital for tests. She got off at the Embarcadero, hoping to be able to ask someone who might know where the right bus was for the hospital. There was no attendant, just a bearded homeless man with a patch over his eye and a red begging cup. You know, Carol was not exactly a fan of the homeless. It was her greatest fear for her son, and she frequently lectured him about becoming homeless. Nevertheless, there was no one else to ask, so she put $1 into his cup. "Why, thank you," he said. She told him that she wanted to know which bus would take her to Parnassus Street. Did he know? "Oh," he said, "you're going to the hospital. I'm going there myself. Sometimes I watch TV at the hospital." And he grabbed his cane and stuck his piece of cardboard that he slept on under the crevasse beneath the stairs. And before she knew it, they climbed the stairs together. She asked herself, "Carol, what are you doing? You're walking with a street person, just as if what? As if he was a real human being. As if he was worthy of a walk with me. As if he was worthy of doing me a favor. In fact, he was now holding out his dirty hand and saying, 'Hi, I'm Renee.'" It was difficult for her, but she shook his dirty hand and said, "Hi, I'm Carol. Thanks for your help." "Glad to." Something very old began to stir within her. There was a message coming through from the universe. She engaged him in conversation to discover that he'd lost his eye a year ago when he was hit by a truck. He couldn't work. He'd had to sell his home. And one thing had led to another, and here he was, homeless. He'd been head of a drug rehab program. He had a master's in clinical psychology from Minnesota. When you're down and out, when you're on the street, when evening falls so hard. He said, "You know, everyone's just one step away from where I am, you know. You can lose everything so quickly. Nothing belongs to you. It's just things. The man upstairs gives you the opportunity to accumulate things, but they're not yours. They come and they go. Now is all we've actually got. Never know what's going to happen tomorrow. I've learned what it takes. You have to take what comes. Keep a smile on your face." And Carol looked at him and said, "Renee, you have nothing, but here you are, much happier than most people that I see around us." Renee said, "Happy? Oh yeah, I'm happy. All that's important happens in your heart." Well, an Asian woman came up to them and asked for 2 quarters for the bus. And Carol opened her purse, but Renee beat her to it. He took 2 quarters from his little red cup and said to the woman, "No worries, I do this all the time." The bus ride continued as Renee talked. Now this street preacher was just getting wound up, and he began to quote one of the most famous passages in all the world on love, the favorite of Gandhi. "If I don't have love, I'm become as a sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. Though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned and have not love, it profits me nothing. Love suffers long. Love is kind. It's not puffed up. Never fails, and now faith, hope, and love abide, these 3. But the greatest of these is love. Put love first," he said with his eyes shining. Renee and Carol got off the bus together. It was as if they were old friends now. This ragged, dirty, generous man, this happy man of the street, held out his arms to her, and she embraced him. The dawn had come for Carol. How can we tell when the night has ended and the day has begun? It's when we are able to look on the face of any man or any woman and see that it's the face of our sister or brother and recognize in them the very face